Beyond diabetes and weight loss. All right, this is where we need to clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings floating around right now. The idea that GLP-1 based medications are just weight loss shots. These drugs didn't start as a body size experiment. Yes, they've been studied for over 20 years and were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, but what caught researchers' attention wasn't weight loss at first. It was the fact that people on these medications were getting healthier in ways that didn't neatly fit into a calories in, calories out story. Blood pressure improved, markers of metabolic stress dropped, liver function looked better, certain brain signals changed, and a lot of this was happening before the scale even moved in a meaningful way. That's the part that made scientists stop and say, okay, something bigger is going on here. That's when the research really expanded. Not because anyone was chasing a miracle drug, but because GLP-1 signaling was clearly affecting more systems than originally expected. And if you want to nerd out with me, I've linked the full GLP-1 research PDF with everything I've looked at, the strong studies, the weak ones, and even the crappy ones, so that you can see how conclusions actually get formed. And if you don't know how to read a scientific study, click here. We're here. We're here. So let's start with the heart. In people with type 2 diabetes who already have a high risk for cardiovascular disease, GLP-1 based therapies are associated with fewer heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular deaths. What's important here is that these benefits don't line up perfectly with weight loss. Researchers think that the improvements are tied to better blood vessel function, reduced oxidative stress, and healthier signaling within the vascular system. In other words, the pipes themselves start working better, not just the number on the scale. Studies suggest slower progression of chronic kidney disease in the people using the GLP-1 therapies. And that appears to come from improved blood flow regulation inside the kidneys and less metabolic strain on the filtering system. Again, these changes show up even when weight loss is modest. In people with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, which basically means that the heart can still pump blood out normally, but it's still too stiff to fill up properly. Especially those who also have obesity, GLP-1 therapy has been linked to improved symptoms and better exercise tolerance. Some of that improvement likely comes from changes in body weight, but researchers also point to effects on the nervous system and improved blood vessel function as key contributors. The liver data is honestly one of the most interesting parts of this whole story. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, now often called MASH, is incredibly common and a lot of people don't even know why they have it. What researchers are seeing is that GLP-1 signaling can reduce fat buildup in the liver and improve markers of liver stress. Weight loss can help with that, sure, but what's important here is that many of these improvements show up beyond what weight change alone would explain. In other words, the liver itself starts functioning better, not just because the body got smaller, but because the metabolic signaling improved. Sleep is another really interesting arena. In clinical trials, people with sleep apnea showed improvements in breathing disruptions during sleep while on GLP-1 based therapies. Some of that likely comes from changes around the airway, but there's also evidence pointing to improved airway tone and reduced tissue irritation that affects breathing mechanics. And this isn't just theoretical anymore. Tirzepatide, marketed as Zepbound, has recently received FDA approval for the treatment of obstructive sleep apnea in adults with obesity. That approval matters because it tells us that regulators saw consistent, meaningful improvements in sleep outcomes, not just changes on a scale. And then there's the brain, which is honestly one of the most fascinating pieces of this puzzle. GLP-1 receptors are spread throughout areas involved in mood, reward, learning, and memory. Again, that's why researchers are exploring GLP-1 signaling in conditions like depression, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Studies suggest the brain becomes better at using energy. The immune system inside the brain calms down, and levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor increase, which supports neuron health, learning, and adaptability. Early research is also looking at addictive behaviors. GLP-1 signaling appears to dampen excessive dopamine-driven reward responses, which might explain why reductions in cravings for alcohol, nicotine, and other substances are being observed in early studies. It doesn't shut down pleasure, it turns down the volume on compulsive seeking. People also report changes in pain levels, joint stiffness, and brain fog. That's likely tied to how GLP-1 influences immune signaling pathways and the brain's immune cells, helping calm systems that have been stuck in an overactive state for a long time. Reproductive health is another emerging area. In people with PCOS and menstrual irregularities, GLP-1 signaling improves insulin and leptin sensitivity, which can help normalize hormonal rhythms and support ovulation. Some studies even suggest improved endometrial receptivity, meaning a healthier environment for implantation. And again, a lot of these changes show up even when weight isn't the main thing changing. So when people call GLP-1 therapies just weight loss drugs, they're not exactly wrong, but they're missing the bigger picture. Weight changes can happen, yes, but often they're downstream of improved metabolic coordination, not the primary mechanism. What GLP-1 signaling really seems to do is help the systems communicate more effectively. Blood sugar regulation improves, appetite signals become clearer, organs experience less metabolic strain, and the body stops overcorrecting and starts responding more appropriately. It's less about shrinking people and more about restoring balance. Not a magic fix, not a miracle, just a system that finally starts working the way it was designed to. When one key signal comes back online, a lot of the other systems quietly follow, and that's the part worth paying attention to.